This is the nature of things. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see will amaze you, astound you, and demonstrate the wonders of the mind. What if each of us could make the symptoms of an illness disappear and cast a spell so powerful it would actually heal our bodies?
Now you're starting to feel a bit better?
And help us breathe easier, walk better.
And my arms will start to move, my legs will start to lift. I was shocked, completely surprised.
Even soothe our pain.
It's like a golden wand these doctors had. How can that be? It's impossible.
You may think it's an illusion, but science is proving that it's real.
Genuinely real, freakishly, seriously real.
Believe it or not, we can tap into the magic of the brain to create something out of nothing. Usually the phrase, "it's all in your head," is a callous dismissal. But when it comes to health, researchers are proving that what's in your head might be very real. The power of the mind to help heal the body is something that researchers are starting to take seriously. Hidden beneath McGill University's Neuro Building, Dr. Amir Raz is on his way to conduct an experiment. Finding his way through the maze of hallways is no problem for a scientist who specializes in solving the mysteries of the mind. For today's experiment, the lab assistant is a professional bartender because this research study is designed to see if the participants get drunk.
The brain scanner is going to monitor your brain activity, and we're interested in the effects of alcohol on your experience.
As far as psychology student Ethan McDonald knows, he's signed up for a study on alcohol.
And then I'm going to start with you, Ethan, as going as the first person. Okay, so let's go.
What he doesn't know is that this gin and tonic comes with a twist.
All right, sit back, just relax.
As Ethan is fitted into the scanner, he's already anticipating what will happen next. But it's the power of belief, not booze, that intrigues Professor Raz. So the bartender is filling the glass with water.
I wonder if the expectation, the anticipation, the suggestion of getting an alcoholic beverage is still going to drive an effect out of these subjects.
Ethan's cocktail contains no active ingredients. In other words, it's a placebo.
A placebo is some kind of a substance that is not supposed to do anything. Most people, when they think about placebos, they think about a round, big zero, just a nothing. But a placebo is something, definitely. Sometimes that something is quite powerful.
Powerful because, as scientists like Dr. Raz are discovering, placebos and the power of suggestion can have a real impact on our brains, our bodies, even our health.
Placebos actually instigate action. They change physiology. For real, not for show. All right, Ethan, how are you doing? Look at this. Yet another fancy drink coming your way. You seem quite tipsy to me. Are you... Be it slurred speech or giddiness, sure enough, after a few drinks, you will begin to see all kinds of symptoms that are associated with intoxication. It starts with what you're thinking.
This is a typical brain at rest, showing little activity. As for Ethan, his brain is getting busy.
The brighter the color, the more activity that we're measuring. These kind of things are extremely typical of people who are being imaged under the influence of alcohol. How it starts with a thought that would actually brew and get some circuitry engaged, and then would permeate all the way down your physiology And that's the science of suggestion.
Suggestion, belief, expectation, complex ideas that influence our thoughts and how the brain processes them.
There's certain parts of your cortex, that thin layer that rides over your entire brain, that contains most of our higher brain functions. And this part of the brain has circuits, and these circuits can actually anticipate what the result is going to be. Are you feeling good?
Yeah.
Ethan's previous experience drinking has taught him how he should feel. In psychology, that's called conditioning.
Conditioning is the idea that you build some kind of a memory for a past event.
That's the weirdest gin and tonic I've ever had.
It may taste strange, but Ethan has no trouble swallowing the physiological messages being sent from his brain down to his body. His hands feel a bit numb. His stomach is a little warm and queasy.
Placebos have the potential to influence your heart rate, your blood pressure, and so on. Can you scoot down a little bit underneath and get out of the scanner? Yeah? That's good? Yeah? Go slowly. Okay? And why don't you just walk over there? Go slowly, go slow, go slow.
After 4 water and tonics, Ethan can't even walk a straight line.
That's good. How are you feeling?
I can't do things the way that I would be able to otherwise. Like, talking is not quite as easy.
It shows us that a placebo response is as real as a drug response.
Raz is not alone in his quest to prove the science of placebos. In Boston, Harvard's prestigious medical school has devoted an entire program to placebo studies.
My job is to put what is ignored as nothing back on the table as a serious component of what healthcare means.
Professor Ted Kapchuk oversees a team of researchers dedicated to unraveling the truth about what placebos can and cannot do.
Can't shrink a tumor, can't lower your cholesterol.
And they can't fix your broken bones either.
Most of the symptoms that placebos change are self-appraisal symptoms, subjective symptoms, depression, pain, nausea, anxiety, functional problems with the bowel or urinary tract.
Conditions like irritable bowel syndrome, which has plagued Boston's Linda Bonanno for more than 2 decades.
It's extremely painful, 24/7, nonstop. Cramping, intestinal pains, severe diarrhea, bloating, you feel sick, you can't eat. It's just horrible.
In 2009, when she first heard about a Harvard study overseen by Professor Kapchuk's research team, Linda was eager to sign up.
Desperate is the word. I wanted to see if they had a cure for this.
She was given a bottle of pills and told to take them for 3 weeks. Incredibly, after only 3 days,
It was like I didn't have IBS. I had no intestinal pain, no intestinal cramps.
for Linda, it was as if a bottle of placebos could work miracles.
There's no pharmacological agents, but the rituals and symbols of medicine activate neurotransmitters, relevant areas of the brain that actually change the experience of illness, alleviate symptoms.
There's real medicine in a placebo, genuinely real, seriously real, freakishly seriously real medicine about a placebo. It's just not conventional bottom-up medicine. It's more top-down medicine.
There's another factor at play, our desire to be in control. Think about getting into an elevator. Even if the doors are set to close automatically, we feel compelled to push the button.
This feeling of agency, this feeling that you are the author of this action, it's the doors closed because you pressed the button. It is the essence of a placebo effect. Okay? And why don't you just walk over there? Go slowly, go slow.
As for Ethan, he's not exactly in control because he believes he's had 4 gin and tonics.
How about if I told you, okay, that this is actually an experiment that has a twist to it. The drinks that you were drinking were actually non-alcoholic beverages. They were not. They were not. They did not contain any alcohol. They were virgin drinks.
That is weird.
It's a sobering thought. The idea that in order for the placebo to work, Ethan had to be tricked into believing he was drinking real alcohol.
I didn't believe you at first, but now I don't feel very drunk at all.
Is that weird or what?
Absolutely bizarre, actually.
But to Amir Raz, it isn't bizarre at all. Just the logical outcome of our mind's response to the power of belief. Not surprising for a neuroscientist who is a master of illusion. As a young man, Raz was a professional magician whose fascination with deception sparked his curiosity about placebos.
One of the things about this experience of being a magician is you learn how people think. You learn what they want to see. Now, what you want to see is very different from what you see. You can be in a situation where you show people a certain thing, but just because of the context and just because of the preamble and just because of your movements and your gesticulations, you can actually make them see something completely different. That form of theatrics can be therapeutic.
Almost, okay.
A placebo can do the same thing.
2-0.
Almost. Almost.
But sick patients don't want magic. They want medicine. Can placebos work without deception?
This is not hocus pocus.
That's what Harvard's Ted Kapchuk wanted to find out. In his study of the placebo response in 80 irritable bowel syndrome patients, half received no treatment, the other half dummy pills.
And I said, you know what? Let's just give patients placebo openly, honestly, clearly.
Linda Bonanno signed up for that study out of desperation. Not only was she given a bottle of placebos, she knew it.
I was so desperate, I thought, well, I will try anything at this point. I never thought it would work.
The researchers made sure participants were well aware they were taking part in an open-label study.
Open label is we're telling you transparently, this is a placebo. The bottle says placebo. The informed consent says, I know I'm getting a pill that's like a sugar pill.
And I thought, that's impossible. You know, when they told me that, how do you convince yourself it's going to work, a sugar pill? How do you do that?
The most important thing I think we said was, even if you have doubts and think this is crazy, just take 2 pills twice a day. We think that this will work automatically. And we got this incredible placebo response. I still can't believe it.
Linda could barely believe it either.
Because that's when I realized I felt better. Then it popped into my head, wait a minute, those sugar pills? No, can't be.
Twice as many patients who received placebos reported significant symptom relief compared to those who didn't get any pills at all. Results that surprised scientists who had always looked at placebo effects with suspicion.
It's a potential game changer. It overthrew a belief that you have to lie and deceive people in order to have a placebo effect.
It still bothers me today that I had to give those pills back, even though I know they were placebo. Because they were working so well. I don't know what was working, but I know it wasn't the pill. Something was working.
Placebos can work wonders to make us feel better. But how on earth can they help us breathe, even walk? World War II. As wounded U.S. soldiers are carried off the battlefield, they beg for morphine. When the morphine runs out, nurses use a syringe filled with salt water, and something remarkable happens. It relieves the injured soldier's pain and prevents the onset of shock. All this from a fake painkiller. So why does pain react so powerfully to placebos? Part of the answer lies in a lab beneath the mountains of Boulder, Colorado.
Show you some of the key areas for the pain.
Professor Tor Wager is a leading figure in the new generation of placebo researchers. But he wasn't always a believer.
Before I started studying placebo, I had a hard time understanding how could this work. It seemed kind of like magic. I said, what do you mean that the patient's body mimics the effect of a drug? Like, how would that happen?
So this area right in here is like primary pain sensory cortex. 'Cause
Years later, Wager has become a placebo detective, decoding the complex wiring that connects our minds to our bodies when we experience pain.
There are at least 5 major pathways that carry pain-related information to the body, and we're starting to understand how they interact with each other to create the pain experience. And so instead of seeing pain as something that simply happens to you, we now think of pain as being partly what happens in the body and partly where are you? What does this mean for you? If you have pain in your knee, does that mean that you're being eaten by a lion and about to die? Or does it mean that this is exercise and this is going to be good for you ultimately?
Once our brains assess that meaning, they spring into action, becoming our very own drug factories, producing and dispensing neurochemicals called opioids that actually act as natural painkillers.
When you get a placebo treatment, the brain produces and releases opioids in circuits deep within the brain that are involved in pain regulation, and it's released in parts of the frontal cortex that send projections directly down to the brainstem centers that control pain and that regulate blood pressure, that regulate heart rate, that regulate breathing.
In Wager's lab, researchers are trying to spark a lasting placebo effect.
All right, are you ready? All right, here we go.
By training the brain to produce pain relief. Every time volunteers feel a painful jolt of heat, they're treated with a cream.
Now, the Lidoderm cream does have analgesic in it.
Whenever they're told the cream is medicated, they expect to feel less pain, and they do. But in fact, the temperature has been turned down, and so the jolt is less painful.
They believe that it's the treatment being effective.
After repeating the experiment over and over, that connection between the cream and less pain is imprinted on their brain.
And so with that minor deception, we create a situation in which the brain attributes benefit to that cream. It will be moderately painful, like holding a hot cup of coffee that you want to put down, and in a sense stamps in that belief into the deeper circuits in the brain. It's not just that they were fooled. We now think that there are active neurobiological mechanisms that created real pain relief. These 2 creams are actually identical creams, so it's actually a placebo.
Okay.
What we did is we lowered the temperature of the stimulation that you were receiving.
Okay.
All right. So are you surprised?
Yeah.
Does that fit with your...
It's definitely surprising.
Right.
Even more surprising, although Jenny now knows she's been deceived, the placebo continues its magic.
So we'll do one more test.
Okay.
So just lie back down.
The brain scans from Wager's study demonstrate a marked reduction in pain signals.
So imagine you expect less pain. And so what gets learned is this thing works.
And as researchers in Vancouver are discovering, placebos work in ways we would never have imagined. For most people, taking the dog out is a walk in the park. But for Paul Pattison, it's an accomplishment. Paul has Parkinson's, a debilitating condition caused by a deficit of dopamine, a chemical in the brain that controls movement.
I'm losing mobility quickly. I take the drugs to produce dopamine so I can move, but it's just tough. It's really tough.
The medication comes with its own set of problems. If he takes too much or the dose wears off, he's seriously disabled. Simply putting one foot in front of the other can be a Herculean task.
For instance, if I need to go to the bathroom is kind of acute. My feet are frozen to the ground. I'm literally not able to move, take a proper stride. I will get down on the floor and I'll crawl.
So I'm just going to go through see what your motor function is like.
John Stossel is director of the Pacific Parkinson's Research Center at the University of British Columbia.
Now, can I just get you to hold your hands out?
He's devoted his career to helping people like Paul. Today, Dr. Stossel is considered a pioneer in placebo research.
Okay. And do that with the other hand.
But back in 2001, while studying dopamine signaling in the brain, he practically stumbled across the placebo effect.
And stand up. The original study of the placebo effect was actually, I have to admit, an accident. We were just trying to better understand the complications of treatment. If you think of the brain as a big mushroom with a cap and a stem, at the top of the stem is an area called the substantia nigra, the black substance, and that's where the dopamine-producing cells are. They send projections forward in the brain that are important for motor control.
Dr. Stossel's team compared patients given dopamine-producing drugs to those injected with saline. Amazingly, the placebo patients responded.
The remarkable thing about this is that they released a lot of dopamine. We realized it was just an enormous breakthrough, really.
They continued looking for breakthroughs. In 2010, Paul was one of 35 patients who signed up for another study with an intriguing new twist.
Dopamine is not only important for motor control, but it's also important for signaling reward, and in particular, the expectation of reward.
The reward is easing symptoms. For Parkinson's patients, unhampered movement is like hitting the jackpot. The researchers wondered if patients would benefit from playing the odds.
If you're in group A, you will have a 25% chance of getting the drug.
So patients were told their chances of getting real drugs versus fake pills.
If you are in group C, you will have a 75% chance of getting the drug. And
we wanted to see whether we could manipulate the strength of the placebo effect by deliberately manipulating expectation.
And if you are in group D, you will have a 100% chance of getting the drug.
Just let me see.
But first, Dr. Stossel assessed each patient's ability to move without the help of drugs or placebo.
Now, same thing with the other hand.
A difficult task for Paul.
Hard to do, eh? Okay.
Head on the cushion. Yeah, that's good.
But a mobility test only tells half the story. So the next step is a brain scan.
That's pretty good, actually.
PET, or positron emission tomography, has been called a live satellite feed from inside the human body. A radioactive tracer highlights the release of a specific chemical in the brain, in this case, dopamine. This PET image shows a brain before the patient receives treatment. The red color indicates a lack of dopamine. But after the patient has taken a drug, the red disappears as dopamine production increases.
Okay, so today is your third and final scan, and for this
For Paul, time to find out his odds of getting drugs versus placebo.
and there's a 75% chance that it is the real drug Sinemet, okay?
Okay.
And no matter what we told them, we gave them a placebo.
But would the expectation that he might be rewarded with a real drug have a real impact?
There we go.
After the scan was over, people got up and they were able to walk, whereas they hadn't been able to at the start of the scan. And that was after placebo.
I went down the hall, and my gait was proper, and I was utterly convinced that I was on medication.
But in fact, you received a placebo. Though you were told you had a 75% chance of getting active drug, in fact, no matter what we told you, you would have received a placebo.
I was shocked. Wow. I was completely surprised. I was utterly convinced. I knew I was on meds.
Open and close your right hand.
Though they were on placebo, Paul and others who thought they had a 75% chance of getting drugs released a lot of dopamine. and had better mobility.
You're going to pull a little bit harder this time. Okay, gotcha. But when they were given other probabilities, including 100%, they didn't. So this may seem to be a bit paradoxical, because you would think that expectation is highest when you're told there's a 100% chance of getting active drug. But think about a child with Christmas coming up. They've asked for a little red wagon, and you've told them, well, we'll see. On Christmas Day, when they open the present, their sense of excitement is probably going to be higher if they didn't know they were going to get it, as opposed to if they'd seen it there sitting under the tree all along. So the uncertainty probably does have some heightening effect here.
The hope is that this knowledge could lead to better treatment. But for Paul, the reward is simply knowing that somewhere deep within him lies the ability to heal himself.
The fact that I was able to perform and do things while not on meds was thrilling. And I guess the study proved that placebos can work. And anything that can produce the effect that allows me to keep going, keep moving, I'll take it. I'll embrace it.
But just how far are doctors and patients willing to go to embrace placebo power?
We're going to make a little incision here.
The answer might surprise you.
Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, and see how Dr. Mayfield's famous Vitazone remedy works.
They say a sucker is born every minute. After all, who could resist the promise of a cure in a bottle?
With unflagging optimism, man has been buying potions and pills for centuries, forever sure that a miraculous solution of all his problems is just around the corner.
But neuroscientists say our assumptions about who will respond to placebos are just plain wrong.
The word on the street is that people who are susceptible to placebo effects are feeble-minded, they're gullible, they have very weak personalities.
Only $1 a bottle, my friend.
The truth is that even the most intelligent people and the most critical thinkers that I know can be extremely susceptible to placebo effects.
So what makes those people susceptible to sugar pills? Researchers are just beginning to discover the factors that can sweeten the placebo effect.
Placebos come in a hierarchy, just like many other things in life. The size of the pill, the color of the pill, how many times you take the pill, all these things influence the effect of the pill.
Big pills elicit a bigger placebo response than small ones. Blue pills can have a more soothing effect than red ones. Even price is a factor.
A very expensive medication is likely to be more potent than a very cheap medication.
And that fake medicine doesn't have to be a pill. Creams can work better. Needles pack a more powerful placebo punch. It seems the more impressive the sham treatment, the stronger the response. But it's one thing to swallow a pill, quite another to go under the knife.
We're going to make a little incision here.
More than a decade ago, Houston surgeon Bruce Mosley wanted to test the effectiveness of arthroscopic knee surgery for patients with osteoarthritis. A colleague made a controversial suggestion: perform fake operations as a comparison.
And I almost laughed out loud because, after all, this is surgery, and all good surgeons know there's no placebo effects with surgery.
Remarkably, Dr. Mosley received special permission to conduct a highly unusual study. Of the 180 patients involved in the trial, 1/3 had a full procedure, rinse the knee joint and scrape. Another third had a partial operation, rinsing only, and the rest were unknowingly playing medical make-believe. Brought into the OR, sedated, and treated as if they were having a real operation, complete with small incisions in the knee.
I was just going through the same motions that I normally would as if I was doing the real surgery.
Even running a videotape of actual arthroscopic surgery, just in case a patient noticed.
And that's how I simulated a real surgery just as precisely as possible.
The results were astonishing, even to the surgeon.
All three groups results were exactly the same. They all did improve as a whole, but none of them were any better than the placebo group. So what we found was that the entire benefit of arthroscopic surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee was a placebo effect.
2 years after the sham surgery, patients who had barely been able to walk were still pain-free.
Boy, was I surprised to know that it was the placebo. I know that your mind can work miracles.
But it wasn't a miracle, just a result of the mind guiding the body, triggered by high expectations of a ritual of modern medicine.
Big breath in. Blow fast. Blow, 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 blow.
At the Montreal Children's Hospital, researchers are trying to solve another puzzle. Not just how placebos work, but on whom.
How are you feeling?
I'm okay.
It's a bit hungry.
Sometimes even taking a breath is a challenge for 10-year-old Josh. That's why he's taking part in an asthma research project.
Blow fast. Blow, 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 blow.
We're seeing how a placebo dose, something that is not supposed to make a difference, actually makes a relatively large difference in the ability of a person to breathe in a comfortable way.
I'm going to give you a good medicine now. It's going to open up your airways and it'll make it easier for you to breathe. All right?
The medicine is really a saline placebo inserted into his ventilator.
That's it, like that.
Now they are beginning to breathe more comfortably, although we haven't even gotten to the point where they're getting that drug.
Okay, but just breathe normally. In and out.
Sometimes that change can actually instigate and propel a real physiological change.
So now you're starting to feel a bit better? Yeah, good.
In some cases, that change is demonstrated by a measurable increase in lung capacity.
That was much better. Look at that.
Children are proving to be highly receptive to placebos in other conditions as well, including migraines and attention deficit disorder. Any parent who has put a Band-Aid on a child's scraped knee or kissed a boo-boo away knows that children intrinsically trust caregivers to make them feel better.
And that's why placebo effects in children are a lot more potent than you would see in most adults.
So which adults do respond? According to new research at Harvard, it may come down to DNA.
We're showing, hey, not that genes can actually potentially predict who responds and doesn't respond.
Professor Ted Kapchuk's team found that patients with a gene linked to high dopamine production were more responsive to placebos. Ultimately, though, genetics or even positive thinking are no guarantee that you'll experience a placebo effect.
You can't think yourself to get better. I don't believe it works that simply. People get better because they feel it not only in their head. The entire environment, the encounter with a person that you trust, the encounter with the symbols of healing, there's a persuasion that happens in that drama that's much more than I think I'm going to get better, therefore I'm going to get better. The persuasion is on the level of the gut, the body, taking those pills.
And as scientists learn more about how and why placebos work, it raises big questions for big pharma.
The pharmaceutical industry hates it. It's driving them nuts because placebo effects in some conditions are so big that it's making it hard for them to separate a drug effect from a placebo effect, which they need for regulatory agencies.
Since the 1950s, drug companies have used placebo trials as the gold standard to measure the efficacy of medicine. If their pills work better than placebos, then the active drug can be submitted for approval.
This is all placebo. Do you have these data for...
Irving Kirsch is Associate Director of the Program in Placebo Studies at Harvard. When he was a practicing psychologist, he often relied on drugs to treat depressed clients.
And sometimes they'd get better, and when they got better, I assumed it was the drug doing it.
But everything changed once Kirsch began to investigate whether placebos could have an impact on mild to moderate depression.
One of the core characteristics of depression is hopelessness. And if nothing else, a placebo, the promise of effective treatment, ought to instill a sense of hope, thereby counteracting the depression.
So he and a colleague analyzed results from clinical drug trials involving thousands of patients.
When I saw the first results that we got from our meta-analysis, I was flabbergasted, shocked.
Kirsch found that 3/4 of those who took drugs did feel better, but so did those who took placebos. That controversial conclusion set off alarm bells in the pharmaceutical industry and even among other scientists.
And we were subjected to a ton of criticism. People said, that can't be right. Everybody knows that antidepressants work.
Critics point out that mild depression often subsides on its own with the passage of time, and suggest Dr. Kirsch was analyzing short-term trials and ignoring data on new and improved antidepressants. Nevertheless, he remains convinced.
Yes, people get better when they take antidepressants. The improvement is substantial. People also get better when they take placebos. The improvement is substantial, and the difference is very small. Not enough to be clinically meaningful.
Kirsch doesn't deny that antidepressants have helped millions of people, but he strongly disputes the reason why.
For most people, the big benefit they're getting is not from the chemical in the antidepressant that they are taking, but from the placebo effect.
But the power of placebo goes far beyond a make-believe pill.
Push your chin against
It could be in the hands of your doctor. McGill psychology professor Amir Raz has quite a few tricks up his sleeve. Like any good illusionist, he has the power to make us believe in something that doesn't exist. A power, he insists, is in the palm of every doctor's hand to make the symptoms of an illness disappear.
There is a little bit of a magician in every physician, or there should be. And that's because any physician with the white coat and the stethoscope strapped around the shoulder is a modern shaman.
There's a whole set of behaviors that make the placebo. It includes the doctor-patient relationship, and includes the hope, trust, and imagination of the patient and even the physician.
Nice to see you.
Can that physician herself have a placebo effect?
So it sounds like these headaches are really having an effect on your ability to function. That must be really hard for you.
Correct. Like most family doctors, Toronto's Danielle Martin rarely has a moment to spare.
Okay, and when you wake up first thing, do you ever have a headache before you get out
But
of
when
bed?
she sees a patient, she's got all the time in the world.
We have pretty good science to show that relationships improve people's health outcomes. I'm just going to begin by taking your blood pressure. I think anyone who's ever had a good relationship with a healthcare provider can tell you that that's true. Some of it has to do with feeling cared for or cared about. That's it, right against the window. That's good. It has, I believe, the power to heal. And so I don't think of it as a placebo. I think of it as a therapeutic tool. I'm going to examine your eyes.
The challenge is to harness the power of placebos and apply the lessons of the lab in the doctor's office.
I think that ritual is really powerful in medicine. So I will, for example, listen to someone's heart, even if they're presenting with a concern that's got nothing to do with their heart, because the act of putting the stethoscope on and laying hands on that person has power.
Good.
But we've gotten so clever with our technology and our medications and our interventions that I think sometimes we forget to go back to the very basic stuff, and the mind-body connection is it's the foundation of everything that we do.
Oh, but in a few weeks you'll never know you were sick.
It may sound simple, even old-fashioned, but yesterday's bedside manner, what Harvard's Ted Kaptchuk calls the art of medicine, has yet to catch up to today's science.
It's my special prescription to make home run hitters.
Like Marcus Welby in the 1950s. That art of medicine, which involves ritual, compassion, good doctors hold on to it.
Do I prescribe placebos? I have a whole category of things that I call can't hurt, might help. Although I'm usually pretty open with them about that.
You know, the perception is that doctors don't use placebos, but all the research evidence is the exact opposite.
A 2008 poll found that more than half of U.S. doctors surveyed treated patients with what they considered to be placebos, things like vitamins and unnecessary antibiotics. A Canadian survey conducted by Amir Raz goes even further.
Above 75% have engaged in some kind of a placebo treatment at least once. Hi there, Josh. How's it going?
But how doctors prescribe that treatment, what they tell, or more importantly, don't tell the patient, is a tricky question.
I'm a scientist. I'm not like an ethicist. But the way that I see it, the first and foremost responsibility of a medical professional is to heal and cure the patient. Can you feel how sometimes with the medication it really affects your breathing?
Yeah.
And clinical judgment sometimes involves a certain amount of deception.
Prescribing placebos and not disclosing it is allowed in Germany. In fact, since 2011, German doctors have been encouraged to treat certain conditions like depression and chronic pain with placebos. That's a stark contrast to North America. While Canada has no official placebo policy, the American Medical Association certainly does.
The AMA guideline on use of placebo is very clear. You're never allowed to give a placebo deceptively. I think that any deception to the patient at this point in human history is inappropriate and unethical.
When we do surveys and when we look at patients and we ask them, let's say that a physician treated you and you got better, and as a result, the physician invites you to his or her office later and they say, you know, what I gave you was actually a placebo. Are you mad at me? Are you upset? You know, how are you feeling? And so on. The overwhelming response that we got from people was that as long as I got better, I couldn't care less. So we're going to give you a whole bunch of pills. Each one is going to get one. You're going to get either a blue pill, a white pill, or a red pill.
For now, Professor Raz is making sure tomorrow's doctors and psychologists are well aware of a placebo's power to heal.
And when you ingest, that's when the magic begins. Why? Because some of these pills contain a certain amount of sedative in them. And some of these pills contain a certain amount of stimulant in them. And some of these pills contain nothing in them. They're placebo pills. So, go ahead and ingest and then answer this question.
The students believe the pills contain caffeine or chamomile. Sure enough, this savvy university class falls under placebo's spell. Those taking red pills report feeling more alert, blue more relaxed, even though...
So you see, at the end of the day, everybody got placebos. Future generations of physicians will not be good physicians if they don't get education about placebo effects and about the science, the real hardcore explicit science that is associated with placebo effects and their responses.
When it comes to placebos, far from being much ado about nothing, it seems the magical powers of the brain are quite something indeed.